And we're being recorded. Fantastic. So this session is going to talk about understanding the many different plans in your community, how they all connect and overlap together, how to make it easier to build them into your CCP. How does the CCP fit into the planning ecosystem? How do you create buy-in with those different organizations and departments that are doing the planning? And this will help to collaborate with your colleagues and your community leaders so that ongoing success in the planning processes and the CCP can align better together. So hopefully we'll help to make sense of this all, and you can make the most of your time and your budget while minimizing the engagement fatigue that Jesse talked about earlier, consultant fatigue, planning fatigue, etc. So hopefully this is going to make your life a little bit easier with CCP, and you can start to understand how it all fits together. We'll move on to the next slide. So someone was asking, where do we get a copy of the slides? I did put a PDF version of the slides in Slack, and they will also be on the CCP workshop webpage. Thanks for that question, Cindy. And I do appreciate the interaction that we have in the chat box. Throughout the session, I will be asking questions, and I love to have the knowledge sharing between nations. So if you have something to share in the chat box, please feel free to do that. And then I'll do my best to read out what's in the chat box. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm coming from the traditional territory of the Haida Nation in beautiful Haida Gwaii. I'm in Skidigat right now, which is the nation that I work for, the Skidigat Band Council. I'd like to take this time to ask you, what territory are you zooming in from? And if you can plop that into the chat box, that would be fantastic. So what traditional territory are you zooming in from? Ooh, Musqueam. Hi, Laura. I'm also from the Musqueam Band. Hi, Trisha, Sky, Leslie, Cindy, Tobacco Plains Indian Band. Nice. Serena, Fort Nelson. Numgeese. Nice, Emily. Jameson. Oh, Bronwyn. Okay, nice to see you, Bronwyn. Mulco. Great. So as much, oh, nice to see you, Bronwyn. So as much as I would love to spend time getting to know each and every one of you, there's almost 30 participants in our group. So I'll just try to use the chat box to get some more information. So if you wanted to introduce yourself and maybe say your name and what you are hoping to learn about from this session. And I'll plop that in the chat box too. So what are you hoping to learn about this session? And I can see your name, obviously, when you answer that question. What are you most hoping to learn about in this session? We want to make sure that we use your time wisely and that you get what you need out of this session. So what are you hoping to learn most about in this session? And then the next question you could also add if you wanted to is, what is your experience with CCP? Like, where are you at? Trisha is hoping to learn about how all the plans work together. You are from the governance framework right now, and it's most likely involving the revamping and current CCP next year. That's great. That's where we're at right now with Skidigat 2. We're looking at hopefully revamping starting our next CCP. Now that we've been through the process once, we've learned a lot. And we've also built community confidence in our CCP. So it's going to make it a little bit easier. Okay. So the agenda in front of us, oh, here we go. How to compile the plan for the book and recommendations for networking to have the book completed and printed. Okay. Hopefully we can connect you with some people who can help you do that. We also have the mentorship initiative, which would be very handy for you, Emily, to answer those questions for you, as well as to get you pointed in the right direction for some more support. So yes, definitely look into the network, the Nation to Nation mentorship initiative. That's something I'm part of as well. Okay, Leslie, we have multiple large-scale engagement projects led by different departments happening throughout the year, as well as CCP, wondering how to best coordinate and share resources, opportunities, and respect community members' time. Great, Leslie, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. How to introduce the CCP in your community, how to work with other departments and organizations, how to research other plans and use that knowledge in your CCP. Okay, so our agenda in front of us is we're going to be looking at different types of plans that exist within our communities. We're going to learn how they all fit together and how they support each other, or how they could be outputs from, or inputs from other plans. We're going to talk about how to build momentum and trust between organizations and departments, how you can work together, especially when the CCP is the overarching plan. And then we'll have lots of time for Q&A. We can move on to the next slide, Vanessa. Oh, another on here was how EMBC can support communities, whatever it is they feel is needed. Maybe Jameson, we can talk more about that at the end, and you can explain what EMBC is. Okay. You'd like to learn, Jeannie is saying she'd like to learn how to engage with all departments in moving forward to implementing the CCP, as well as overlap. Okay, this is great. I have an action plan in here that will help you, Jeannie. And I have templates too that are also in the Slack drive. So my name is Ewens. It means one of plenty. And I belong to the Ch'oth Haida Eagle clan of Kailananis. I'm of both Haida and Musqueam descent, and I belong to the Musqueam Indian band. But I live here on beautiful Haida Gwaii, so I have the best of both worlds, traveling between the two nations. I'm passionate about economic development, Indigenous planning, also nation to nation planning. I have also been lucky to be involved in the production of a film called Edge of the Knife, which came from our comprehensive community plan. It focused on revitalizing the Haida language while protecting our land and waters, as well as creating connections between youth, elders, and technology. So it was just an amazing experience. I'm currently employed as a proposal writer, and more recently for the last 3 years as the executive director for Gwalgana Corporation, which is the economic arm of the Skadia Band Council. I've also been proud to be part of INAC's or ISK's mentorship initiative, which is nation to nation mentoring at no cost for the nation. So wherever you're at with your CCP, or if it's economic development or any other supports, we come together to share our knowledge at no cost, as well as helping to support people with tools and resources. I really enjoy facilitating and teaching, and so you'll see that my presentation today is more about facilitating the knowledge in the room. So I'm grateful for each and every one of you to be here to share your knowledge. I've got a diverse range of experience, from CCP to land use planning to language revitalization to project-based planning, work planning, strategic plans, etc. And I first started learning about this by running a kids culture camp, and that was solely based on funding and proposal writing. And so to do that, to raise funds, I started doing community engagement within our community and hosting events and planning sessions and planning for camps and planning for, and these camps are remote. They're in the very south end of Haida Gwaii, where there's only boat access. There's no running water, no electricity. The kids learn how to, they live in longhouses. They learn how to harvest their own food, process their own food, pack their own water, pack firewood, build fires. They learn life skills as well as survival skills. So it's an amazing, and language and culture as well. And I like to bring this skill or this value that I've learned there forward into all of the work that I do. So I always want to make sure that I include elders, that I include youth, and that I honor our language and our culture at the same time. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start off by asking the question, what is CCP, or what does CCP look like today? And I know we talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but part of my facilitation practice is to start at the beginning and then figure out how it all connects together. So the question is, what does CCP look like today? And it's very different today than it has been in the past. It's been evolving. So can anyone answer what CCP looks like today? What does comprehensive community planning look like today? Holistic. Yes, it's definitely holistic. It's different for every community. That's right. There's no cookie cutter approach. Engaging the community is envisioning and core values. That's right. That's what creates a community, is coming together and having the same core values and also planning for the future. Decolonizing how we see planning. Yes, that's definitely how CCP is different. It's also a way that we've always done things in our communities. Our elders were talk about how generations and generations ago, we had planners. We planned where our houses went. We planned access to water. We planned access to food and harvesting and processing and preserving. If you want to move on to the next slide, Vanessa. So CCP, okay, someone just mentioned restarting meetings after COVID is where we are. Yes, a lot of people have chosen not to do their CCP during COVID because you don't want to put your elders at risk. Others have started building the capacity to be able to offer it online. So that's definitely new. Door-to-door activities is also something that's happened in a safe way, or maybe outside. So we're building on strengths from resilient past. We've all had historical trauma and things that have happened to us, and we've survived. So we know that we have that in common. We have ways that maintain and strengthen community resilience, and we build on this strength in our communities. Yes, Kim, for now, answering is done in the chat only until we get to the end of it, where we have the Q&A, and then we can start talking. Coming together to plan for uncertain futures and the impacts of climate change. So coming together for planning for uncertain futures, we've had wildfires that have devastated communities. We have floods that have devastated communities. We have COVID-19. We have other impacts like flooding or climate change, rising sea levels. We have to plan to move our, especially here on Haida Gwaii, to move our villages to higher grounds, our infrastructure to higher grounds. We need to focus right now. We need to focus on what's happening. We need to meet people where they're at. So that means that we're focusing on like the COVID-19, the health pandemic. How do we support our people? We might be focusing on, supporting our people who are now homeless, who have had, who are impacted by the fires, or who are impacted by the flooding. We have to meet our people where they're at. We have to support their needs first before any planning can be done. Okay, the next. New ways of how we can work together and look after each other. So last year there was an amazing presentation on how a community did their CCP using Zoom and the different ways that they engaged their community. Also, people have done door-to-door activities with surveys and questionnaires and bringing meals or healthy food boxes or pandemic supplies to their people. Okay, the next one. What are the results from these challenges? What are the results from a new way of doing CCP? Next bullet. New stories of collaboration, new practices of care. And I think we'll see this theme going throughout this session, that we're focusing on community wellness and health. And that's what we need to do, is we need to look after ourselves as individuals. We need to look after our families. We need to look after our community members. We need to look after the health of our community, because if we don't have our health, we can't look after other people, and we can't do the work. So I have more accessible for some people who couldn't go in person. Yes, that's true. Some people are more comfortable staying in their homes and may have more resources. I know in our community, we've been able to purchase laptops and iPads for our elders. And we also did that for some of our younger children. They didn't have that, or they didn't have internet. So now we're building that capacity so that they can participate. Kim noted that it aligns with community existing plans. Yes. Next bullet. Okay, what is a CCP? What is a CCP? What is a comprehensive community plan? Someone had mentioned before about it being the values of the community. These are high-level values. The next bullet, please. Kim says, a plan that allows you to plan for your future with respect to all members. That's right. It's inclusive of all community members, planning for our future. Goals and actions for our future. That's right. It identifies clear goals and clear actions. A community plan is created by community and organized around a shared vision and goals for a community's future. Yeah, you guys know what you're talking about already. Okay, next bullet. A community is created through a process. Someone also wrote here, a document or visual that captures the community's desires, a map of what CNC need to focus on, community and culture. Allows a method to incorporate our Indigenous ways of knowing and being. Yes. It can include, it should include chief and council, because that's our instrument to help implement the CCP for sure. So a community plan is really a process. So once you start that community engagement process and you create that process of gathering information, identifying challenges, coming up with opportunities or solutions, implementing those solutions, and then bringing those ideas to fruition, it builds trust in the process, and that process can be continued to use for other plans, like economic development plans, like strategic plans, like any kind of community engagement you need to do within your community. And it can also become the consultation for your community. Have you consulted with the community the way we do with our CCP in order for a project to be implemented? Changes the old ways of planning from the bottom down, meaning community sits at the forefront. That's so true. The community is steering the actions and the things that happen within the community. Ideally, council shouldn't go forward, or anyone in the community shouldn't go forward with a project unless they can show that they have community support through community engagement. A community plan is ongoing. So this plan is always changing. And I know with our CCP, we had implemented probably at least 40% of the things that were in our plan before our plan went to print. So it was just amazing how much had been accomplished in a short period of time, and it's still being referenced all the time. Okay, the next bullet. The community plan is a tool, and I apologize. I don't have anyone else in my office to answer the phone. Okay, next bullet. It's a tool. So ideally, it's not something that's going to sit on the shelves. It's going to be accessible for everybody to use. It's a living document that you can adapt and change when needed. So true. I'm always taking snapshots of our CCP and putting it into proposals that I write, or I will quote the CCP when I'm writing things and working on other plans, just to show the community support. And a community plan is a commitment. It is a commitment, especially when it's being signed by your community, if it's being enacted into law, if it's being adopted by your council. It's a commitment for sure. A lot of work, a lot of time and knowledge goes into that CCP. So it's a commitment. And then I have a little graphic here showing how the CCP works together. We have the high level vision that goes into that, the community plan goals, those break down into different strategies. And we talk about like the things of our SWOT analysis, ideally. Currently, where are we today? Like, what is our readiness, or what is our current assessment? We're going to look at our current strengths and build on them. We're going to look at potential threats or issues we might have in our community. We're going to look at opportunities, and we're going to turn all of these concerns we have into solutions. Okay, and I'll take the next slide. So one of the things you need to do when you're doing your pre-planning, as well as when you're doing your writing, but when you're doing your pre-planning, you need to look at what types of plans exist in your community. So we have a lot of plans out there. We have a lot of consultants that have been paid big money to write these plans. We have plans that sit on shelves and aren't necessarily used or accessed. We have a lot of information there that maybe people don't have accessibility to. So the CCP can help highlight those ideas or information in your community. So what type of plans exist in your community right now? I know my first bullet up here is a housing plan. Part of what we did in our CCP was to address housing in our community. So we interviewed our housing manager and put together all the information we could about, whether we had an energy plan, or, if we had a housing audit, how many houses we had in our community. So we could start putting together those statistics, as well as looking at the different funding sources and things like that for our community. So what type of plans exist in your community? What plans would you need to look at when you're working on your CCP? You want to plop that in the chat box. Community plan, health plan, economic development plan, emergency management plan, and land use plan. Thank you, Tricia. Let me go to the next bullet. Economic development, 5-year plan. So Tricia's got that nailed. So I have our 5-year plan there from Skidegate. And the next bullet. A project plan, a business plan, feasibility studies. A lot of research goes into those. Next one. Language revitalization plan. Those are really important too. And how to integrate language throughout your community, through your schools, through your employment, through your community signage. Next one. Capital plans. Next one. Land use plans. We have a marine plan also, which is amazing because it talks about land use planning, but it talks about marine planning, but it also talks about like from mountaintop to sky, to the stars in the sky to the ocean floor. It's very comprehensive. Okay, the next slide, please. So we found that we needed to create a planning inventory of all the plans that exist in our community. So we took our time to do that. And this resource is used by all kinds of people that come into the community. We need a capital code. So if anyone has one of those, I would appreciate a template. Great. That would be another really good question to ask the mentorship initiative. Perhaps you can go into Slack and then ask that question in Slack and someone there can help you out. Okay, the next slide, please. So this is the cover page of Skidigate's comprehensive community plan. It's called Utgaes, which means being together to talk. We're also honoring our past while shaping our future. That was the translation that the elders gave us for CCP. So this plan went from 2012 into 2017. However, this plan was unique because halfway through working on our CCP, we realized that our land use planning is so deeply interconnected to our CCP that we needed to put it in one document. So I'll show you some pages as we go through this. The next slide, please. So we realized that CCP is comprehensive community planning, is how we live. It encompasses everything that we do. So this includes empowering our youth, protecting our land and waters, that which makes us Haida, which is our land, culture, spirituality, our language, culture, spirituality, etc. Fostering community pride and equity, increasing community resilience, enhancing good governance, establishing a vibrant local economy, as well as promoting health and wellness. But at the same time, our land use plan had the same sort of directions. So our land use plan encompassed how we use our land, how we work together with our land. And some of those are the same: protecting our land and waters, enhancing good governance, promoting health and wellness, but that would connect more to our food, like our food is our medicine is one of our traditional laws as well. Okay, I'll move on to the next slide. So in our CCP, we had one side of the CCP was specifically for community planning. And the other side of the page, when you open up the book, is for land use planning. So an example on the bottom of the screen, it says directions. So those are the ones I just read out to you. So the directions are on the bottom, and then we have pathways. So for example, protecting our land and waters, the pathway for that would be to reduce litter or pollution. And an action that would connect to that would be perhaps creating a community cleanup day where people would walk around and pick up trash. So you can see that there, it's CCP. And then land use on the other side, protecting our land and waters is one of the directions. A pathway would be to increase Haida control over Guayhanas. So Guayhanas, this is a national park in the south end where the Swan Bay, the Kids Culture Camp is. However, it's a partnership agreement between the government of Canada and the Council of the Haida Nation. So we're trying to figure out how do we have more control over our traditional territory working within that agreement. And an action item to go with that would be to purchase a multi-jurisdictional vessel was an example of, and another one would be define land use areas and supporting policies. So one of those would be complete access to the traditional territory for fishing and hunting, etc. And now moving more into the business. Okay, I'll go on to the next slide. So here's another example of how CCP is on one side and the land use plan is on the other. This one specifically focuses on our theme today, which is the community wellness and health. So one side for our CCP is promote health and wellness, while the other side is sustaining our traditional food, medicine, and natural resources. And I'll just move on to the next slide. So how does this all fit together? And as someone had mentioned earlier, it's different for every single community. When we looked at our plan that was done by consultants, it had 3 categories. It had capital, education, and I can't remember what the third one was. I think it was health. It only had those 3 categories. And then when we started looking at how to be holistic and look at our community, we realized there was no room for spirituality in our plan. There was no room for traditional language in our plan. So every single, our justice is in this one here. So this is an example of, this is from our tool, our CCP tool, the planning templates: justice, culture, social economy, governance, lands and resources, health, education, housing, infrastructure development. When we started our CCP, we had 22 different directions, and then we started to amalgamate them together, like that which makes us Haida, to encompass our spirituality, our language, our culture. And what's really interesting too is that our community prioritized these directions as well. And they said, number one, language needs to come first, our language and our culture, because if we don't have that, we don't know who we are. And number two was our health and wellness. We need to make sure that our health and wellness was number two, because if you don't have your health, you don't exist. So it's just really interesting how community works different than, say, the government might focus on capital and infrastructure and housing. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide. So this is another example from Kitsum Kalem Indian Band. I had the opportunity to do some nation-to-nation mentoring there. This is specifically for how the CCP fits into their band council. So on the top, we have the CCP, which is created by the community, and it's a 25-year plus vision, so it's long-term. We also have the council's strategic plan, which will pull each of those directions into their 5 to 10-year plan. And then we have the departmental strategic plan. So this might be education, this might be housing, this might be health and wellness. So this might go into a 1-year plan. And perhaps that might be how the department heads are evaluated in their job positions. And then finally, the next one would be department program project work plan. So these would be work plans that would be implemented by each department with all of the staff having specific responsibilities to implement those projects. And those could be checked up on monthly or annually. Next slide, please. So this is how the CCP relates to other plans. If we look at the CCP, generally, it's always found in the middle. It's a very high-level visual visioning document with high-level priorities. That plan, if we go lower, can be rooted in bylaws or land code or land management act or a constitution. It can be written into the law, or it can be adopted by the community, which is what we did. We had all of the community members sign it. And it can also be adopted by band council as well. And then if we look up, the CCP can work together with land use plans, language revitalization plans, economic development plans, etc. And then from that, you can derive your strategic plans, which could be a 5-year plan or or longer. But it's, how does this connect? Is it supported by the CCP? Does it have the same direction? And then finally, those would be made into even shorter timeframe plans of a work plan, which could be a month-long plan, it could be a project plan, or it could be a 1-year plan. Next page. So this is another example of how a comprehensive community plan can work together with economic development. And this is an example from south of the border, Ferndale, Washington. How it works with capital plans, utilities, land use planning, housing, and transportation. I learned a lot from traveling across Canada and working with other nations, how their priorities change based on what the current challenge is. So some of those challenges might be land use planning and protecting their traditional territories and resources. Another might be transportation. It costs so much for them to travel, or the quality of their road systems, etc. So a lot of these depend on what's happening in your community. Okay, and the next slide, please. So this is another example of how community values and your quality of life are most important, and how those connect with the band council, and how they then direct administration and staff, and how they're held up by the CCP, or how they should be holding up the CCP through accountability and transparency and fiscal responsibility to the community. When you go back through your plan and you look at how you're implementing your plan and how effective is your plan being, or how effective is each group working within the plan. So your comprehensive community plan contains your visions, principles, objectives, and goals, and that further directs maybe the economic development or strategic plans in your community. And those can focus on infrastructure, transportation, sustainability, or social development. So again, if you map this out, it would look different for every community, but this is an example, and I encourage you to do this with your own community. I've also done this when I first started working on our CCP, and I know Musqueam has done this as well, but looking at an influence model. You know, what has influenced your community? And you can look at that the same way with planning. What plans are in place and how does it influence or affect your community? Okay, next slide, please. So this is called Uthla Ista, which means just do it in Haida. That's the direct translation, Uthla Ista. And it means you just do it. You just do it, like you take responsibility. So this is the action plan. And this template I did put in Slack. So if you would like to use this blank template for your community, you can download it off of Slack. But ideally, what it's going to do is it's going to connect all of your planning, all of your departments into one plan. It can be used as a monthly document where you check in with each other to figure out where each item is at. So the first row is action. So what action is taking place right now? On the top of mine, it says, and this is for our land use plan, build assisted living on the waterfront. So this is happening in our community now. However, the assisted living is up high so that the elders can see the water. That was one of their priorities. And this connects to the direction in our plan, which is increasing community resilience. It's also promoting health and wellness, and it's also fostering community pride and equality. And then it talks about the tasks or activities. The first task was to make a plan. It's actually under construction now, which is great. Whose responsibility is it? So here it says SBC, so that's the band council, but it's also our local health center is taking responsibility for it. Time frame was 2 years. I think it took much longer than that, probably 4 or 5 years. What are the benefits of this? What are the key indicators for success? And what stage are we at with it at the end? So to keep tracking, well, this is still a good idea, but we haven't initiated it yet. We don't have our work plan. We don't have our budget, or yes, it's completed, it's being implemented. One of the really good things about having this action plan is that it can be a template. It can be a tool for your band council to have in their back pocket when they go out to meetings and partners and funders, and they can say, oh, wait, I have this project. Is there funding available that might fit this project? And you basically have your proposal written right in front of you. You've got the key directions from the community support. You have the key action items or tasks. You have the responsibility. You have a time frame. You have the benefits. You have the indicators. And if you're working on a budget, you're going to have those costs. I have a question here. How do you facilitate the community members understanding these many plans so they are incorporated into the CCP? Good question. I don't necessarily know that all community members need to know about how all the plans fit together. Like I had mentioned before, if you do the work and you put together your planning inventory, you can make that accessible to the community. So you can put a link on your website, and then they can click on that link, and then they can have access to each of those plans. Otherwise, I would say I would create a graphic that sort of like a one-pager or a mind map of all the plans and how they connect to the CCP. I like to make things really easy like this. A one-pager is a lot easier for most community members to understand. So this action plan, it can be used as a tool for your band council to have in their back pocket to know what the current plans are and what stage they're at, or the current actions or projects. It can also be used between departments. So you can have education, you can have housing, you can have health, you can have whichever actions here, and you can get together like once a month or once every 6 months and get on the same page and figure out how you can work together, how you can share resources, how you can share funding or share staffing, etc. Okay, the next page, please. So this is really important for me. This question here is, how is Indigenous planning different than other planning? Because we've had a lot of consultants come into our community. We've had a lot of non-local people do work in our community, and their perspectives are much different than ours, and their priorities are much different than ours. So how is Indigenous planning different than other types of planning? You guys want to throw that in the chat box? Community members are the experts. That's true. I do this exercise called called knowledge in the room, or I use it as an example, but I get people to brainstorm as much information as they can about something in a short period of time. And then people realize how diverse the knowledge is in the room and how different people from different ages carry different knowledge with them. We have traditional knowledge that has been passed down from generation to generation to generation that people aren't even aware that they carry that knowledge until it's pointed out to them. Life experience is valid. So yes, like some of our elders, they have 100 years, maybe 80 years of knowledge, plus they have the knowledge that's been passed down from generation to generation. And then also our young people, they're planning for the future. They're planning for they're planning for their generation, they're planning for their children's generation, and maybe their grandchildren's generation. Inclusive, we want everyone to be included. That's true. Not just who shows up, right? We want everyone to have access and to be included. Indigenous worldview differs from a Westernized view. Correct. Can I have my next bullet, please? It's personal to each community. Only a certain few have access to certain knowledge keepers who they share with. Correct. And a lot of trauma has happened in our community, and people won't open up and share their knowledge to just anybody. We can work at our own pace. That's right. It doesn't need to be during that fiscal year, like spending the money that's given to you for your plan. It doesn't work during fiscal years. It happens when it happens. Commitment to place. It's definitely place. It's basically place-based, land-based, water-based, place-based for sure. It's our commitment and our connection to the land. Non-linear. So we show this CCP planning like that continues to go in this circle, because we can start something and then we're going to go back and we're going to, start something else, and we're just going to keep moving as things move along at different paces. So it's definitely non-linear, and it doesn't really have a start and end. It just continues. Create safer place for sharing, giving, and build stronger intentional relationships. That's the strength in our community, is our own individual relationships to each other. That's right. It's not focused through nepotism. True. It's got to be transparent. Next bullet, please. It doesn't necessarily have a dollar value. So when we're doing our planning, we're not thinking about a dollar value necessarily. One of the exercises we do with planning is we ask people to think big, or children to think big, because people are always like winning the lottery. What would I do if I had $1 million, right? So what would you do in your community with $1 million? So people start to think big and think, visionary. I would do this if I could, I would, but I don't have the money, so I can't, right? That's how people think. But then you ask them again, as you get through the planning process, what would you do with $10,000? Like, what's a quick start project you can do right now in your community? And we can get $10,000. That's not a challenge. But then when you get through the planning process, you start thinking and asking them, what can you do with no money? What kind of change, what kind of positive change can I make in my community now with no money? And that's how houses got built. That's how infrastructure got built. That's how food was exchanged. That's how all of this happened with no money. Community cleanups. You can do a ton in your community with no money. The next bullet. We take into consideration the process of sharing through storytelling. Yes. It's inclusive. Someone mentioned that: youth, elders, all community members. Next bullet. It can include language. A lot of our culture is held in our language. Next bullet. Spirituality. Really important is spirituality, and maybe traditional and protocol. Next bullet. Social well-being. When we look at economic development in our communities, it's not about making the big buck necessarily. It's about social wellness, and we all have to come together. We all have to be looked after in order to build a stronger community. Next bullet. Oh, it's also political and traditional. So we have all kinds of different things happening in our communities between elected council, traditional clans or chiefs. A tool to revitalize of displacement of our language, cultures, and traditions. That's right. We need to build resiliency through all practices. Bottom up, grassroots planning versus top down planning. So true, Chris. Okay, next bullet. Food. Our planning is focused around food. In our community, whoever is cooking and what's being cooked is going to depend on how many people show up. And our planning is also, next bullet. oral, which someone had mentioned before, through storytelling and oral. We've had a lot of distrust with the schools, residential schools. Not all of our people have had a good experience with the educational system. Therefore, they may not read, they may not write, they may not feel comfortable doing that. So you need to have another way of communicating with your community, and that's through oral connections and interviews and just having conversations. Next bullet. It's also seasonal. So we can't plan during the summer. People are out there hunting, fishing, doing all kinds of other things. You're not going to get the same turnout during the summer as you will in like maybe the fall and winter months when people are more home-based. It creates capacity building, and not just for staff as in professional development. Yes. Also, I'd like to say that a lot of planning happens when we're sitting around and eating and when we're talking. It also happens when you're doing things together. So if you're out, hunting or skinning deer or processing food, that's when a lot of planning also happens. Okay, next bullet or slide. Oh, creates capacity building for not just staff as in professional development. Yes. So one other thing that Indigenous planning is different than others is that it uses traditional laws or protocol. So this is an example of some traditional laws within the Haida Nation. And this is, Wadlahan Gudek, which means everything depends on everything else. It's all connected. If you do something over here, it's going to affect something else over here. So that's why it shows that we need to be, we need to remind ourselves that what we do may affect other things. And maybe we should be working together with other organizations or other people or other things, because it's going to affect everything. Another one is yakudang, to have respect, to do all acts with respect. Another one is to ask first. So do you have permission to do what you're doing? This means community engagement, community consultation. Do you have permission to share this knowledge? Do you have permission to share this story? Or maybe it might be something cultural too. Maybe it's not, maybe it's taboo. Maybe it's not something you should be sharing with everybody. It's just for that family, or it's just for that community. So traditional guiding laws. Next slide, please. So in our CCP, we have traditional laws, both for community planning as well as some for land use planning. And some of those would be putting food back into the ocean. So if you took something from the ocean, you need to put it back. So if you took crab or clams or fish, you need to return what you don't use back into the ocean, because it's part of the ecosystem. Another one, especially on Haida Gwaii, is when the tide is out, the table is set. So that tells us that we can eat all year round off of our beach. And we need to respect our land, because it provides our food, it sustains us. Another one is that the tide and time wait for no one, so that things will go on whether you're ready for them or not, and you need to be prepared. And another one is our food is our medicine. If we eat our healthy traditional food, it will sustain us and make us healthier. So those are some examples. And then I'm on to the question period. I know I rambled through that, but we only have about 10 minutes left, and I'd love to hear more from you and answer some of your questions. So if you do have a question, please feel free to put your hand up, and then I can call on you, and you can unmute yourself when I call on you. That was really good timing. I just got the message saying that we have 10 minutes left in this breakout session. Okay, I see Kim. Go ahead, Kim. Do you want to unmute yourself, Kim? Do you have a question?
Oh, yes, I do actually. So when you're aligning these plans within your community and all of your departments, how did you go about ensuring that everybody was on board and there wasn't, I'm not saying that there's resistance, but people get compliant in where they're at, and they don't want to look at more work, they think it's more work. So how did you get around that?
Yeah, that can be really difficult. And a lot of this planning process involves building trust and creating relationships within departments and communication. So I think by first of all, in the research and planning phase, you need to go and interview each of the department heads and, collect their plans, because a lot of really good work has already happened. And a lot of people may think, we've already done this. Like, why are you doing this again when we've already done the work? And you're like, actually, I just want to get caught up. I'd like to know exactly, what's happened in the past. And part of community planning is recognizing, especially when it comes to implementing and evaluating, is recognizing, what have we succeeded at? Like, what have we done? What can we celebrate or put to the side and focus on what still needs to happen? So you can acknowledge successes and also acknowledge the strengths. So when you do that, then you build the buy-in with those department heads, saying, hey, I really want to highlight the good things that you're doing here. I want to bring this forward to the community. And also, you don't want to have to replicate the work that's already been done. So you can pull like clips from each of the plans into your CCP, and you just have to like note, well, this came from the community health plan of 2000, or this is a shared statement from an elder, that supports our CCP. So there's lots of really good ways of doing it, but it's focusing on the strengths. Right, another question? I see, oh, you still have your hand up, Kim. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Alyssa.
I would like to know what you would recommend in terms of, I guess, re-engagement or relaunching your CCP. When we started, we did some pre-planning work. We had a committee, but since we started, so much has changed. 3 of our committee members that were kind of like the planning team have moved on to other organizations. So, when we started to work together. We did a video to highlight what CCP is, and it's a great, cute video. We had a launch event where we said, this is what the project is gonna be, what we want to be able to do. We're going to have community engagement sessions. We're going to do all these things. And it seemed like it built a lot of momentum. And then similar to what other people were saying is that, COVID happened, but even prior to COVID, we had somebody leave the planning team. Then we had a death in one of the planning team's families. So, you know what I mean? Things were kind of like up in the air for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then with COVID, nobody wanted to leave their homes pretty much. We tried to do some stuff online. We didn't really catch that interest of people during that time. So I was off on leave. I had a baby and I'm just returning from maternity leave. So we started almost 2.5, 3 years ago. And, we're 2 years, second year into the pandemic. So I guess my question essentially is, what would you recommend in terms of trying to relaunch or re-engage the community so that we can, build upon the momentum that we originally had?
Yeah. I agree with you that it's very difficult to do, but it happens to so many different bands that they're just not ready to do their CCP. Like, you can start and then things will change. You'll have a change in council. Maybe the council doesn't support it, or something else happens, like a crisis happens in the community. It's common. So you're not in this alone. It happens to a lot of communities. My suggestions are I have 3 suggestions for you. One is you need to start small again and get the information out there to your community, especially just the base information, like what is CCP? If you do a brochure or something like that, and you highlight the key people who are working on it in your community, a way for them to communicate and talk to you, and just keep reminding people about what it is and that it is happening again. And then number 2 would be, find out what people really need to be engaged. Like, what would pique their interest? What would their focus be? What kind of incentive could you give them to participate that they really need? So if you can do something fun like that, just something small and fun to get people going again, whether it's a booth too, going around your community, like a safe outside in a public space or what have you, where people can come up and talk to you or answer a democracy question or something. And then number 3 would be to review where you were, how you got to where you were, and you might have to start over. But what kind of project, small quick start project was identified, and do that project and make a huge point of saying, this came from CCP. We've done this. Now let's start on something else just to get it moving forward again. You really need to start small, because that's what happened in our community too. We started with like 20 people coming to a community dinner, the same 20 people that come to every open event. And in the end, we had hundreds of people coming to our community dinners. I hope that helps. And then Trisha, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm just wondering again about the plans and their integration. That one slide you showed that the plans that are current in the community, the arrows going up to the community plan. And because I'm reviewing all these plans and looking at how they all fit together, they don't all say the same thing. Like some of them are quite different in what they say. And so there isn't sometimes alignment or congruence in what they're saying. And so what I get this feeling sometimes that it just creates like everything just feels too big, It's like, oh my gosh, when we try to tie them all together now, how are we going to do that? It just starts to get complicated. And so I'm just wondering if you have any like inspirational words about that.
You're bringing back lots of memories for me, because I had tables in my office with piles and piles of documents and information and sticky notes all up the walls. And then I had to prioritize that information. But most of it came from talking to people, asking them, okay, in this plan, what's really relevant to you right now? Like, what do you feel is most important, and just focus on that. And a lot of the people that maybe when the plan was done are not the same person running the plan or that department now. So things may have changed, and it may have been done by a consultant too that was not working in that area. So I'd say start with the people, talk to the people that are running those programs and working with those plans, and figure out what's a priority for them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we have 2 minutes. Probably have time for one more question.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Jeannie.
My name is Jeannie. Thank you for the workshop. It's really given me like so much information. But my question is, we have consultants that are like right now doing our strategic planning. Now, I'm feeling like all the information that you shared about, putting together all the plans that we may have in place in the different departments. I'm not even sure if we have enough plans, and I don't know if those plans have even been shared with the consultants in order for them to make a proper strategic plan. So my question, I guess, is, would it be very important, because this is being recorded, to share this with Chief and Council and the ones doing the consulting to watch in order for them to make a better strategic plan for our nation?
So do you have a CCP in place now?
We have not integrated a CC plan as of yet. They want the CC plan to be implemented. I have 2 students that I have this year. What you talked about revisiting, because we've been kind of shut down through this pandemic. I want to revisit some of the stuff that was, talked about, reprioritize and make sure that we're still, what they're asking for, and then possibly implement if, so that chief and council can start to work towards, working on what the people have asked for. But to do this, I was told we're actually supposed to have a strategic plan first, which we don't. And that's why, when I hear all of this, when you talk about, all the different plans from different areas, like I have not been a part of the people who are doing up the strategic plan with chief and council. So I really don't know what it is that they're looking at doing. So I'm kind of like lost between CCP implementation, all what you've just shared with us, and how that's even going to make a good strategic plan going forward.
Okay, so just a quick housekeeping. We have 5 minutes so we can stay in this room and keep chatting, and then they'll automatically push us to the break, but I'll stay and answer Jeannie's question. So you don't have to have a CCP to do your strategic plan. But what's important with the strategic plan, probably with council, is that you have to have your projects and activities in your strategic plan in order to be funded. So it's a requirement with ISC in order to get that funding for those specific projects that are outlined. And usually those projects are supported by your CCP. But if you don't have a CCP, then it's hard for that to happen. So I would say, like, move forward with the strategic plan. And then if you can, revisit it once you have your CCP finished. But yeah, it's kind of like a back and forth, right? Like one needs the other. But for sure, if your council is willing to watch some of these videos, then definitely have them watch them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? We have a couple more minutes, 2 more minutes. And please feel free to ask me questions in the chat box too. I'm more than happy to answer them throughout the next couple of days. Tomorrow, I'll be presenting on proposal writing tips and tricks for projects, for CCPs, etc. So tune in for that one. Thanks, you guys. Right, and there's also Slack, so we can continue asking questions and answering questions on Slack. And I did put the slide presentation in Slack for you, as well as the templates. Okay, Hawa, Heichka, thank you.